Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And for those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below to offset the dislikes. It would be greatly appreciated. But over to the point. I had someone link me a video that Alex did. And actually I thought it was a good video. I'm going to give some credit for that. Now, is this to say that I don't have some criticisms of Alex? Of course I have criticisms of Alex. I don't agree with everything he does. But here's the thing, guys. When we're discussing individual videos and individual points, your personal biases against other things that people do really shouldn't play in. And if they do, you're not a reasonable person. Okay, if someone makes a good video and they raise some good points and you agree with it, you give credit for the good stuff that they did. You don't stand there and say, but you do this over here, right? Because that makes you an ass clown if you do that. And it makes you biased and it makes you an unreasonable person. So in the case of this particular video, I kind of listened to it and said, yeah, it was actually pretty good. I thought he'd made some good points. I think it's some of these things that people do need to hear, particularly the younger kids caught up in the gym bro mentality, because he raised valid points about training frequency. And I'll go through some of the points that he made in here that I am nodding in agreement on. And it's kind of the case, I look at videos like this and it makes me do realize that I've been critical of Alex in the past. And sometimes rightfully so. Meaning a lot of that criticism was deserved. But his channel is generally improved. It's improved a lot. It's improved a lot. And it's to the point to where hopefully even people who are fans of his look at what he's saying now and realize that it conflicts a lot with what he used to do. And that's okay. We all evolve. We evolve in the way that we teach. We evolve as lifters. We evolve as athletes. And that's a good thing. It should be a positive thing. And if we are improving, that should always be embraced. And so I would look at what he's doing here and say, yeah, this is a positive direction. I like the direction this stuff is going. I'm going to find myself being a hell of a lot less critical of the guy if he keeps making videos like this. You just have to be realistic here. So he essentially broke down the problem of the bro splits and the traditions in the gym of a lot of guys doing the body part split and hitting a muscle only once a week, which leads to enormous muscle imbalances, underdevelopment, everything else. And particularly because they only have one back day, one leg day, stuff like that, it tends to be just an overlap of show muscles. And what a lot of these people don't understand is that this method evolved due to guys with phenomenal genetics for the bodybuilding gig who are on very, very copious amounts of anabolics. Not just a little bit of stuff and not just steroids. They're on a ton of stuff. Whole cocktails of things. And it changes your muscle protein synthesis uptime to where they could get away with that. But what ends up happening, because if you have a chest day, a back day, a leg day, an arm day, a shoulder day, you guys see where I'm going with this. It basically just turns into all arms and chest because there's tremendous amounts of overlap in all of that. There's overlap because your arm day tends to end up working triceps, some chest, some shoulder. Your chest day works all of them. Your shoulder day ends up working chest, shoulders, and arms, so on and so forth. And what ends up getting underdeveloped is everything else. And it really ties into something else he said about the show muscles versus the go muscles and injury risks. Because that overlap tends to push you into that direction. But the main thing that I wanted to cover with that first is that he talked about the fact that you're not training each muscle group at least twice a week. The overwhelming amount of scientific data at this point shows that even for intermediate and advanced type lifters, hitting a muscle group at least twice a week is generally ideal. Now, that doesn't mean when I say at least that everyone should be doing 3 or 4, because in many cases that's not ideal. If you start hitting maximum recoverable volumes in a single session, you start hitting optimized training volumes in a single session as an intermediate or advanced lifter, your lifestyle better be phenomenal if you start doing a third. I mean, what I kind of do right now, people might see that, and I would tell most of my followers, don't do what I do. What you see me doing right now, if you wanted to replicate it, you should probably do it 4 days a week, not 6 or 7. Okay, and that's important to understand. There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes for me to build to doing that. And I also eat 4,000 calories a day, like 300 grams of protein a day, and I sleep 9 or 10 hours every night. And I've built my work capacity up over months and months and months and months to be able to do this. Okay, a little bit of a difference. I wouldn't recommend that people do that, and that's a perfect example. For most people out there, 2 upper body, 2 lower body sessions every week with optimized training volume. That's going to get you the best results. It's going to get you jacked. It's going to get you strong. But the point he made is, yeah, there's different rotations and splits you can do to achieve that twice a week. There's different methodologies available. There's different ways you can split it up. I would tend to push people in the direction of the upper lower. He discussed things like push-pull leg. I'm not necessarily a fan of push-pull legs. Could I be if by legs we mean squat is the main starting exercise and we build off of? Okay, maybe. If by pull you come in and you deadlift, you're doing heavy deadlifts and then building around the deadlift, okay. Maybe I would accept that if you're also doing lat work every session. It's not really true push-pull legs at that point. So meaning pull, meaning deadlift based. So we're still hitting hamstrings and glutes and quads. Same thing on the leg day. Maybe. But I digress. Over to the point with that. I tend to promote upper-lower rather than think of things like push-pull legs. It's the direction I tend to push people, and I think it works ideally. I think it's ideal for at least intermediate and advanced lifters. But he raised that point. Then the next point he raised also had to do with the show muscles versus the go muscles. These guys focus purely upon the muscles they can see in the mirror. Basically the interior side muscles while neglecting the posterior side. And even if they train legs, it ends up being all quads. Most of these guys, if they squat at all, squatting takes up a very small amount of their training. If they squat, it tends to be interior dominant type squatting. And then extra quad work, or maybe a bunch of leg pressing. The posterior chain gets neglected. None of these guys are coming in and putting in more work for their hamstrings and glutes than they are for their quads. Right, that's a problem. That creates risk of injury, assuming they even train their legs hard at all. All right, but not doing so, that leaves you at risk of injury. It makes you non-functional, makes you non-athletic. Come back over to the upper body. A lot of these guys, chest, shoulders, arms, right? They neglect their back. They neglect their back tremendously. Well, that puts you at risk of injury. By neglecting back, I mean they're not really putting a serious focus in their lats. If they do, it might be some lat pull-downs. Some of these guys are focused on getting really strong at pull-ups and hip hinges, right? They're neglecting their erectors. They're neglecting their lats. All of the go muscles. And the difference is show muscles versus go muscles. And usually the difference, a guy who looks really good from the front has worked his show muscles a lot. When he turns around and you see him from behind, you see his mid-traps, lats, erectors, glutes, hamstrings. Those are the muscles that really make you strong, powerful, athletic. I mean, let's talk about being out on a playing field. You don't think those muscles matter when a football player hits somebody? You don't think those muscles matter when someone's grappling someone in BJJ? It matters. It matters a lot. Those go muscles are the ones you see from behind, and oftentimes even when someone turns to the side. Someone turns to the side. But they focus on the show muscles. Well, not only does it make them unathletic, it makes them look really tiny from behind. They only look good from one direction, what they can see in the mirror. But it also predisposes you to injuries. Okay? You are far, far more likely to have shoulder issues. Again, how many of these guys later, and I've seen this. I'm in my 40s, guys. I've seen so many has-beens. I've met so many guys in my age group. I used to lift. Okay? All these used to lifts. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, but I hurt my shoulder and I quit. Right? All the kids who are hearing this, they need to understand what he is saying here. Talking about longevity, do you just want to look good for a few years and then be done, or do you actually want to be strong and fit for your entire life? You're going to be strong and fit for your entire life. There's a big difference. And if you don't take care of stuff like that and proper muscle balance early on, you're going to be one of these has-beens. These guys who I know, who I used to lift. I used to bench 275, or they'll claim they're 300 or whatever, until I hurt my shoulder. Or they always say, I separated my shoulder. That's the one I always love. I hear that all the time. I've heard that dozens of times. I separated my shoulder. Like, okay, whatever the hell that means. But it's always like this. I used to squat till I hurt my knee. Why'd you hurt your knees? Do you understand how bad your training has to be to injure your knee squatting? That's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Your training has to be horrifically bad for that to happen. It's not normal. You hear it all the time. Okay? People need to understand these things. And then the final point he made is the guys understanding that they don't need to focus on strength. It's all about the prompt, bro. Without understanding that different rep ranges have their place. If you guys really want to get jacked as a drug-free lifter, you are going to have to get brutally strong. And I'm not saying not to do volume training, because I do more 10s than anything right now. But you have to get strong. You have to get really, really strong. When you meet guys who are actually natural and they are jacked top to bottom, which is relatively rare, better look at what they squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, what their weighted pull-ups are. You'd be surprised. Most of them are real strong. They're real strong. What do I mean real strong? A general rule, I have never met a jacked natural who doesn't have well over a 300 bench. I've never met a really jacked natural who doesn't have close to a 500 squat. Most jacked naturals I've met have close to a 600, or if not a higher deadlift. That's been my experience as a general rule. Well over a 500 deadlift. They're usually approaching, if not exceeding, a 500 squat. You see a 300 plus pound bench. That's the norm. That's the norm. Most of them are really strong at something like a weighted pull-up or a weighted chin-up. Every single time. I can't think of a single exception. Anybody I know who I believe is legitimately natural, who you guys would look at and say, that dude's jacked. It's just what's required. Size and strength go hand in hand, particularly when drugs go out of the equation. It's just the reality of it. You can't get around that. I'm not saying you can't do your volume work, because you need your training volume. You do need high training volume to get really big. That is required if you want to optimize it. But you have to get strong also. And that's a point he raised, and so I want to give credit for that. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty good video. I largely agreed with what he said, so I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.